HR employees of Reddit, what was the most ridiculous hilarious complaint you ever received? HR consultant for 10 plus years. You won't believe the amount of times I've had to shut people down for trying to sell their pyramid scheme side hustle in the office. Was once asked to investigate a sexual harassment situation where 3 different women were coming onto a male co-worker throughout their shift. I took down the details. Got the names. Easy peasy investigation, so I thought. A week later. Nobody by these descriptions or names had ever worked for the company. I decided to talk to the gentleman again. After a lengthy conversation where things didn't quite stack up, I asked him how these women communicated with him. I do not. With a straight face. He looks me in the eye and replies telepathically like I'm some kind of idiot. I had never sent an employee for psychological evaluation up to that point, and I hope never to have to again. So yeah, I was asked by a delusional schizophrenic to conduct a sex harassment investigation on the voices in his head. I was a manager and had to call our HR in on this one. We had a computer that was sized by multiple people, and a couple of girls complained that it had a virus and porn was always popping up when they turned it on in the morning. I decided to have a look, see if someone was ducking around on the closing shift, so I looked at the security footage and lo and behold, one of the supervisors was watching porn and jerking off. When we called him and he didn't deny it but said technically he didn't pull his dick out, he just played with it in his pants, so it's not really that bad. The HR guy just looked at him, didn't say a word until after what seemed like forever the jerker said, so I guess I'm fired, and then walked out. I told my co-worker as professionally as I could that it wasn't appropriate for her to be using her phone while at work. Teaching kids, supposedly. She spent all her time on Facebook. Little kids would be screaming and wailing on each other literally 10 feet away, and she was totally oblivious. She complained by email to HR that I was rude and confrontational. They pulled me aside and told me to be more careful about how I spoke to co-workers. I told them my side of the story. They spoke to her again. She got a written warning. They didn't tell me what happened, but I gather from office gossip that she lost her it and started shouting at the HR staff. Rude and confrontational perhaps? Anyway, she's on her final warning now, and she has a habit of hitting on the married dads of our kids. Involving children and adult matters. Why hasn't your mummy paid your fees yet? Don't you want to come to daycare? And generally being an unprofessional, self-absorbed pitiso. Can't wait until she gets fired. My work has one men's toilet. Had one co-worker complain that another guy kept using the bathroom before him. And doing big ol' poos. But the way he said it was like this guy knew when he was about to go. Ninja'd in just before him. Dropped a massive stinker and then forced the other guy to marinate in the smell when he went for a leak afterwards. We ended up adding a can of air freshener to the bathroom. And the next complaint that came in was the poo guy never used it. Not HR. But I have a story about an hour person that I will never forget. The company I worked for hired a new girl in the HR dept. She was young and very enthusiastic. I'm sure this was probably her first job out of college. Cut a week or so later. And I'm riding in the elevator on the way up to the executive floor. And she steps in with me. A couple floors later we stop. And an older gentleman wearing a polo shirt and jeans gets on. Before I could greet him. She says. Pretty casual for a work day. I had to stifle my laughter when he replied with. That's one of the benefits of owning the company. She turned an amazing color of red that I haven't seen since. It was all in good fun though. She ended up working there a long time. I was the complainer. My buddy was dating a girl that worked in HR at my company. Their relationship starting was totally unrelated to me. They had gone to college together. He dumped her and she didn't take it well and started threatening my job since I was still friends with him. I lodged a complaint just through the main email. complaints@company.com or whatever it was. My complaint was assigned to guess who? I ended up having to independently schedule a meeting with the VP of HR because the regular reps and middle managers were protecting their rep rather than believing me. An employee used very derogatory terms to make fun of a customer who was in the back of the store, while talking to the customer who was at the counter. who happened to be the other customer's mother. Yikes. Not an our employee. But I recently reported a bus driver for bringing his girlfriend to work and rubbing her feet while driving. She sat on the spot right behind the driver and put her feet where he could reach for them with one hand. I took a picture of the whole thing and debated on what to do with it for a while. On the one side, I didn't want this guy to lose his job nor have to explain why he was rubbing his girlfriend's feet at work. Imagine the awkwardness. On the other side, he missed a turn and then took a U-turn on a downhill blind curve where we could have easily gotten nailed. In the end, I came to the conclusion, when other people's lives are in your hands, that's what your hands should focus on. I worked in HR and my coworker hated me. She wanted someone else to get the job I did and she would complain about me to management for anything. The final straw for everyone was when I sneezed and she slammed her keyboard on her desk. Basically ran out of the room and didn't come back for 30 minutes. Management called me in and said I was making too much noise. I told them I sneezed and they said she would complain about me every day, so they didn't believe her but had to make it look like they were doing something. She left shortly after. 20 years in HR. 2 female employees visited me to complain that their female team member didn't wear underwear under her work pants. We had a complaint that the toilet roll holders were too low in the stalls because when a guy was taking a poo his knees were hitting the holders. We then lifted all the stalls' toilet roll holders 8 inches on whole company site so no knees would hit the toilet roll holders. No complaints since. HR working for the people. It was lunchtime. A client came in. My colleague was eating a sausage roll and had it on his desk. Next day a formal complaint came through about my colleague's sausage roll and how unprofessional it was of him to have a sausage roll he was eating on his desk.